Hey, Better, Richer, Stronger. Welcome back to part 3 of 3 of my conversation with my dear friend, my teacher, my facilitator, lady who changed my life for the better and continues to do so. Mary Osborne, welcome back.
Thank you, Alan.
And I will welcome you back with warmth to do this. So Mary is a Seattle Mariners fan. She does not like, so we don't like everything. We don't share all our common likes, but we have enough in common that we can stay in the conversation.
But which team is on a roll right now?
Yes, indeed. But which team is perfectly capable of roaring back again? Hey, Yankee fans and Mariner fans, we can have a good conversation on this in the chat while Mary and I talk about some other stuff. So we are continuing to talk about the whole health practice. We want to tie it into Mary's program that's coming up in November. And the link for that program is going to be on Better, Richer, Stronger. And if you've got questions about it, Mary wants to hear them. MaryOsborne.com is where you reach her. But I cannot overemphasize how this program changed my practice in my life in just 2.5 short days. And it is a tremendous investment in your well-being. And we're going to talk today. We talked about the health of your patients, which is what we're here for, the health of your team, because if your team is not healthy in body, mind, and spirit and mission, you won't be as effective. Today, it's going to be the talk about the health of your practice and the health of that individual in charge of that practice, responsible for that practice. So, Mary, welcome back. Let's get going. The health of a practice starts with a subject that we're all very scared to talk about, and that's the M word. Mary, let's talk about money in the dental practice.
Well, we said early on that I think sometimes we see as if it seems as if there's a conflict between having a whole health dentistry practice, spending time with patients, helping develop people over time and develop that collaborative relationship with people over time. And we see a conflict between that and having a successful business.
Yes. And
in my opinion and in my experience of many, many years, it's the exact opposite. What's really true is, to the degree to which we are able to focus on the health of our patients and we are able to have a healthy team that interacts well together and that works well together, is the degree to which the practice is successful. Now, it's not to say that there aren't some practices that are financially successful without those things in place, but there's a way in which they come together. And I had an experience when I was working in a practice with a dentist, and he was going to the continuums at the Pankey Institute at the time. And so we were wanting to incorporate some of the principles of the initial new patient visit and be more expansive in our new patient visit and that sort of thing. And so we were setting aside an hour and a half for a new patient visit. And I sat with the patient and did a preclinical interview. And then the doctor joined us, and the doctor and I together did the exam with the patient, and it was a co-discovery interactive exam process. And then they would come back afterwards for us to talk about possible treatment, and they would have a hygiene visit with me. And I remember one patient in particular who came in and went through that process, and he loved our practice. Just loved it. I mean, he just raved about everything. Nobody ever listened to me like that. I never had an experience like that in my life, and really went on about it that day when he was leaving. And he came back for a second visit, and we talked with him about treatment. And he had a lot of dental needs, and there was a lot to talk about. And we talked with him about a number of things that were going to require some work. He had a lot of old, great big old clunky amalgam restorations that needed to be replaced. And again, he seemed enthusiastic about it when he left the practice. Well, like 2 days later, we got a phone call from him, asking to have his records transferred
Oh,
to another practice.
ouch.
Because this other dentist had told him that he would do the same treatment we had recommended. He would do it for, I don't know, $1,000 less or whatever. And I remember being furious about the whole process, because one of the things was I knew the dentist who was asking us to send his records to. And I knew that in that practice, he would never have gotten the kind of treatment plan he got from our practice.
Mhm.
That if he had shown up in that chair in that other practice, they would have patched and played with the stuff that was in there. They would have cleaned his teeth. They would have accepted whatever his insurance was, and they would have moved on. But because we took the time to really evaluate, not just tooth by tooth, but the whole structure and how it fits together, and approached it from a more comprehensive perspective, we were recommending cast restorations and that sort of thing, when I know he would have had more patch and repair amalgams. And so I was talking to the dentist about that, and I was really mad, and I was just saying, well, I can't believe it, and he's gonna blah blah blah, and I was kind of doing my thing. And the dentist said to me, so I really hear you're really upset about this, Mary. I said, yeah, I am. And he said, well, so I think what I'm hearing is that he had a wonderful experience in our practice. Yes. And we did a very thorough, comprehensive exam and created a very thoughtful treatment plan for him. Yes. And as a result of that, he's going to get better dentistry. He's going to a different dentist, but he's going to get better dentistry than he would have gotten if he hadn't come to us first.
Mission accomplished.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said, isn't that what we're all about?
It takes.
But here's the point. Then the next thing I had to say to him was, yeah, but we didn't get paid enough.
Yeah.
For that exam, because we spent a lot of time with him. We had invested a lot of time, that initial visit and then the second visit, and we really were not charging a fee that was appropriate for that. I said, we didn't get paid for that. He got the advantage of it, and we didn't get paid for it. And the dentist said to me, okay, now that's a different subject. Now let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
How do we set our fees in such a way that we can feel good about providing the care we're providing that person, whether or not they end up having comprehensive restorative dentistry in our practice?
Yeah. So it's the old Pankeyism. Dr. Pankey used to say, what's a fair fee? A fair fee is one that compensates us properly and that a patient pays with gratitude. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance there. The spiritual aspect that people like me, and I would presume most of the people watching right now, are going for. I mean, we need to feel good about what we're doing, especially in a profession that's under siege. And at the same time, we can't forget that if we don't have enough money coming into our practice, then we're not able to sustain our goodness.
We can't continue to have the materials we want to have. We can't continue to have the kind of community members.
Yes.
Team members that we want to have, right? I mean, we can't provide the care. We can't take the time to be with people if we can't keep the practice alive financially. And I would suggest not just making it, but thriving.
Yes.
Because a thriving practice is one that has a vitality to it, right? We're talking about life itself.
Yes.
And then so there's a way in which there are only so many things we can control in that equation, if you will, of how people, of what keeps a practice successful. But so we have to be mindful about how we set our fees. We have to be, I think there's a really good chance, by the way, that if we had charged that particular patient that I just described, if we had charged him two times what we charged him for those 2 visits, he would have paid it with with gratitude.
Yes.
He
Yes.
he was very enthusiastic. We were the ones who were not confident enough in what we were doing in that visit to feel okay about a fee. We tried to keep our fees more like the other practices for a new patient visit. Now, I'm not saying that that means that every single thing you do has to have a dollar amount, an appropriate dollar amount attached to it. When we spoke in the last segment, Alan, you talked about or in the first one, I think it was, you talked about a patient who you saw who came in, and she came in to have crowns done, and she ended up in tears for most of it. And you didn't get as much done as you wanted to get done. You're not in that particular instance, when we run all those numbers and plug in the time and all of that, you're not going to get compensated as well as you would have if you're going to spend a little more time with her the next time you see her, all of that. So there's a judgment there, but is it a worthwhile investment?
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You make your practice profitable by creating raving fans. You make your life better. I felt so good about that appointment that it was, there's no sum of money that would compensate me to the degree that this young lady's emotional gratitude toward us compensated me. So yeah, there is a balance. But if you're not keeping the lights on, your fees have to be such that you can keep the lights on and afford to be able to spend those extra few minutes.
It's one of the things that I hear a lot in circles that are talking about the oral systemic connection or oral systemic health is that people are learning a lot of new ideas and new techniques and new, whether it's saliva testing or airway things and even airway in very young children. All the pieces that are out there is that there's a struggle with how do I monetize it? How do we set fees appropriate to what it is we're doing? And if there's one recommendation that I would make about anybody who wants to incorporate anything in their practice and how to set a fee for it is, first of all, do it for nothing, right? Start doing it.
Yeah.
And start understanding and experiencing the value of your service. When it just lives up here, when it's just a course that you've been to and okay, I learned some stuff about, let's say I learned how to do some sleep appliances. Okay, then it all becomes all about that piece of plastic and how we're going to get charged for that. But if I can do that at the very minimal cost to the patient for the first whatever number of times I need to do it, I will grow in confidence. I remember starting a program in a practice that we called our perio plan. This was before soft tissue management plans even existed. We made one up, and we created a fee for it, and we spent a lot of time figuring out what that fee was going to be because it was a 6-month plan. And it incorporated several visits. And so we went through and we sort of figured out how much each visit should cost, and then came up with a fee that seemed like a lot of money.
I remember you talking about that last year.
Yeah, it was for me especially as a hygienist, because it was the first time I had ever quoted a fee that high for hygiene. I was fine quoting the fees for the doctor's visit, but now this was going to be for me. And the reality of it was, I think we actually used that fee that we came up with. I think we might have used that twice. And it's not because, and we raised it, right? We raised it almost immediately because we saw the value in it. We saw the way patients changed their attitudes. We saw that they came with gratitude and appreciation. And we realized that we were providing a higher level of service. And I think that that's challenging. I think in dentistry, we have a hard time feeling good about being compensated for. We talk about being compensated for care, skill, and judgment.
Yes.
But we really only feel good in dentistry about being compensated for our skills.
Yeah, and our friend Paul Henney talks about that transactional things.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm starting to question, well, I've been questioning how we do things in dentistry, because I think this transactional thing where we're charging for piece goods has led to all of this. Can I say crap? Yeah, okay, say crap.
I think you just did.
Whoops. In terms of a crown is worth this, and a filling is worth this. A number of surfaces, are you kidding me? What about the apprehensive person who needs a little TLC? What about the filling that kisses the pulp that needs some TLC? These are things we need to start rethinking, and not all of us are going to be able to do it. And frankly, I don't think either you or I have all the answers, but I do think that in a collaborative process, as the Whole Health Practice Conference, as in all the other things that you facilitate, I think in all of us will emerge some answers to this. And Paul Henny's answers are not the same as mine, are not the same as I know Fred Lima is listening, so not the same as Fred's, but that we all can apply this in a different way.
And that what comes up for me is something I heard from Victoria Sweet, who wrote the book Slow Medicine.
Yes.
A wonderful, wonderful book. And she talks in her book about if you see the body from a mechanistic perspective, right? And that's the way we've typically talked about the body, as if it's a mechanical thing and we can take out pieces and put them back in and that sort of thing, a mechanistic perspective. Then we look for somebody to fix the machine.
Yeah.
And that's who the doctor is, the person who fixes the machine.
Oil change 1995.
Exactly. And that's what
coupon. Yes, indeed.
yes. And but you have to pay extra for parts.
Yeah.
Right? It's the part. And whereas or do we see the body as a plant? And then the practitioner is the gardener. And the role of the gardener is to remove barriers to health, right? I mean, it's when you think about it from a mechanistic, and dentistry has had that mechanistic perspective. That's why we're paying for parts instead of paying for care.
Yes.
Instead of paying for care. And so that's not the easiest conversation to have, but it's an important one. It's an important one to engage in, as you said, with colleagues, is to challenge each other to move beyond what do the parts cost into what's the true value of the service that you're providing.
Yes. Because one way or another, we have to raise X amount of dollars to keep the lights on.
Right.
So are we going to do it by hammering out oil changes for 1995, or are we going to choose a different route where we create health for people, help people create their own health with the help of our brains and our little fingers, and attach value to that?
And which is more valuable? Right. I mean, that's the thing.
Everybody.
See, when we created that hygiene model that we created in the practice, patients were not only periodontally healthier, they came into us with a totally different mindset. It was a one fee thing that we created and they paid it all in advance. Their appointments were totally different. I mean, we realized right away they were owning the situation. They were owning. Our good friend Mike McDivitt, periodontist, wonderful, wonderful human being and great periodontist and wonderful at helping people see value. Things is, I mean, he simply says to his patients when he sets them up for some work on coaching to help them with their home care, and he does it very effectively, and he charges a fee for it, and it's not a huge fee, but it shows that it places a value on it. And then there are times when he says, well, I think you could use a little bit more coaching, and I'd like to waive the fee for this coaching session. Now, how different a conversation is that from we're going to get you back so we can teach you how to floss?
Yes. Yep. Yep.
right? And you're going to have to pay X number of dollars for that visit. It sends a different message that truly affects the health of that patient in a different way.
That affects the health of the financial health of the practice in a similarly beneficial, not a parasitic way.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's jump over now to the one final critical component of the whole health practice, and that is the health of the practice owner. So we're going to run this a little bit longer than the other segments have. Bear with us. If you guys want to stop this and restart it, do it. But docs and hygienists, listen carefully, because if we ain't healthy, we ain't practicing. This is dentistry, Mary, as you and I both know, you 30 years of hygiene, me 41 years of spinning teeth. It takes a toll, and we've got to be very careful and very physically and mentally prepared.
It takes a physical and emotional toll on our bodies and on our psyches and on our souls. And when I read, and I know, Alan, you're a great representative of the value of physical exercise and diet, and look at those guns, because they're important, because they make a difference. But if we can't prioritize that in our lives, if we can't find a way to, fit that in to all of the things, like, and you're at a point in your career where you don't have small children at home anymore, right? You're not trying to balance those kinds of things. But this morning you did spend time with your children, right?
Yes, I did. I gave up some gym time today. And admittedly, these guns were a lot bigger, and they're going to get a lot bigger. I fell off the wagon after COVID. And this is not the emotional health component of this, cannot be overemphasized. I'm doing programs on that now with my friend Frank King on depression awareness and suicide prevention. So I had a conflict this morning. I knew I had to meet. I was meeting with you this morning, but I also, both of my kids were visiting from out of town. Am I going to go to the gym and do what I could do tomorrow? My kids aren't going to be here tomorrow. So there is a balance of physical, mental, intellectual, and emotional health that we have to be very aware of in order to be the best versions of ourselves walking into that office on Monday morning.
And I have to say that I think sometimes when we talk about balance, we tend to think about it as more for this means less for that, right? And whether it's more time in work means less time with my family, or more money for my hygienist means less money for me, or more whatever. We tend to look at balance this way. I would like to ask people to reframe that thinking into what if one feeds the other?
Yes.
What if my happiness at home contributes in a positive way to my happiness in the practice? What if my taking an extra time at lunch, or at the end of the day, or at the beginning of the day, or whatever, to go to the gym makes me a healthier person and a better person all day long, right? And what if that being a better person all day long influences my total physical health as well? They shouldn't be in competition, but rather my goal for everybody I work with is for people to enjoy their work.
Yes.
For people to feel fulfilled. And I have to say, when I go on some of the chat rooms, hygiene chat rooms, or some of the other online things that dentists are involved in, what I hear a lot is disappointment and even anger and resentment of patients not appreciating what we do. And that, that really makes me sad. I think everybody wants to be well paid, but I always say we don't want them to just pay us. We want to bring them brownie. We want them to bring us brownies, right? Because those are the patients, those are the days that really that are more likely to send you home being a better father, or a better mother or a better daughter, or, I mean, those are the days that make us remember why we do this.
Yes,
Carl Hammerschlag, psychiatrist Carl Hammerschlag, says, how does your work remind you of what you like best about yourself?
yes,
Your work should remind you of what you like best about yourself. And I believe that coming to work with a perspective that looks at the whole person, that looks at the whole organization of your practice, that looks at the whole profession of dentistry, that perspective is one that is more life affirming.
yes.
It reminds me of what I like best about myself, because I can forget if I get in there and start scraping teeth. I can forget.
We lose the
I
perspective.
can think it's about scraping and not about the rest.
Yeah, and I think another Alanism that I created that we can say in public. Mary, you know me too well, but
Yes.
let it emanate from the pores of your skin.
Yeah.
Allow yourself the self-acceptance, the self-love, and let that emanate from the pores of your skin directed outwardly to the people you're taking care of. This is something, again, that I learned in total health, that if I am healthy up here, in here, and in my 10.5-minute plank that I've got to get to do again, that I can transmit that. Mary, I had two of my patients lost significant amounts of weight after they saw what I did. I was 35 pounds heavier than I am now. And a couple of people realized it, and damn, they got off their duffs and got to work. If that's not a success, and I don't give, sorry, Mary, this is New Jersey. If I don't give a damn how much I got paid for that, I got paid. I got paid. And it all goes back to.
And your practice thrives as a result of all of that.
Yes, the goodwill in a business sense, the goodwill you create in others by having goodwill toward yourself and emanating it out. This is a huge lesson I learned from you. And this is what you get out of this type of facilitative conference, is that the collective brings out some thoughts that the individual would never have had in a million years. It's so important. It's so important. So a couple of things here as we wind down. You got to take care of yourself. You got to make time. And making time doesn't mean, it's not a zero-sum game, because when I get stronger, I become better. And the conference,
Exactly.
and these ideas, these thoughts that you helped to generate are priceless, absolutely priceless. So I would encourage you to go out to the whole health workshop that Mary is doing at the beginning of November, Mary?
November 4th and 5th. And by the way, if any questions come up about it or any of the things that Alan and I have been talking about in these 3 sessions, you can email me at mary@maryosborne.com.
Yeah, these are recorded. What we've done in the last 2 sessions have been recorded on one day. So we're not live today, but Mary's always live to take your questions. So mary@maryosborne.com. We will post the link to Mary's website. We will post the link to this conference. I urge you, if you've got the time, forget about everything else, get out there and bring your team with you. In fact, you said last week, Mary, if there is a physician on your team, if you have a friend who's a physician, get them out there, because they'll be mind-boggled by this stuff.
Physical therapists,
Yes.
myofunctional therapists, they're all part of this team in many practices of how we care for people.
Chiropractors, nutritionists, let's go. Mary, I can never thank you enough for what you've done for me.
Thank you, Alan.
Dentistry, everything. And let's keep this thing going. Let's stay in this conversation, you and I, because you're coming back here. This is land of the free and home of the bride, New Jersey, but it's also home of the black male and the strong arm technique. So if bribery doesn't work, I'll find other ways to get you back on here because you're a priceless resource to this profession, Mary. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Better, Richer, Stronger. We're going to be back next week and we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about marketing with Jamie DeBees. So we're going to have a 3-part series on that and on and on. So be with us Saturday mornings at 11 Eastern. And I guarantee you're going to be learning some stuff. For the time being, eat right, live healthy, get sleep, get exercise, make somebody's life better each and every day, if for no other reason than it feels really good. And most of all, we got one shot at this life, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the ride. I'll see you next week.